Hello and welcome to Big Picture. I am Vishal and today we will talk about the statement given by a US panel on the Citizenship Amendment Bill 2019 and India's refutal. Now, India has slammed the US Commission on International Religious Freedom for its remarks on the Citizenship Amendment Act 2019. In its response to the strongly worded statement of the US panel, the Ministry of External Affairs has termed it neither accurate nor warranted. MEA spokesperson said the bill seeks to meet the basic human rights of persecuted religious minorities already in India from certain contiguous countries, and the statement of US panel is guided only by the prejudice and biases on a matter on which it clearly has little knowledge and no locus standi. For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests in the studio today. Let me first introduce the guests to you, beginning with the former investor Niraj Srivastava, who is here with us. We also have with us the consulting editor from Hindustan Times, Pramit Chaudhuri, and we'll also be joined by strategic expert, Retd Major General DHRUVCKATOCH. But let's begin the discussion with you, Mr. Srivastava, and let's try and understand, before we go into the statements made by them and the counter which we made and how significant it might be, what exactly is this panel, USCIRF, and what are its powers? How was it established? How seriously can we take this?
I think that the External Affairs Ministry statement in response to this, that sums up the locus standi or lack of locus standi of this particular panel. It is a body which is created by the US Congress. I don't have the exact details, but what I want to point out is that it does not have any locus standi to comment on the policies of foreign countries. Especially a country like India, which has its own constitution, which has provisions for protection of minorities. It has an independent judiciary. It has a free press. There are adequate constitutional safeguards for protection of minorities. So, it is not for these foreign bodies to tell India what it should do. The second point is that countries which have themselves violated human rights on a very large scale all over the world, and which continue to do so, they should do well. They should look at themselves, what they are doing, rather than look at others and try to fix things in their own house. Put their own house in order without commenting on other countries
and trying to meddle into the internal affairs.
It is like meddling into the internal affairs
of the other democratic
countries.
Sovereign nation.
Yes.
And there is Pramit, your views on the USCIRF, because as per their website, it says that it was set up or created by the International Religious Freedom Act, IRFA.
Correct. So you correctly said, set up by the US Congress through an act of Congress. However, it's important to realize that it is essentially still an informal body, despite its claims to be part of the US government. All it is a group of congressmen who have caucused, as they say in America, together on this one specific issue of religious freedom. It has no statutory powers. The statute that created it makes it very clear that its job is to only make recommendations to the US Congress. There are several such similar bodies within the US Congress, largely done as favors by US congressmen for other US congressmen, or in this case, the daughter of a congressman, to give them something to do, if you wish. And so there are ones on counterterrorism, there are various other small issues on, let's say, Armenians and Turks and so on. None of these have any influence whatsoever, and in fact, after every time this commission in particular issues a report against India or other countries, the US embassies are often very quietly ring up to say that please ignore this report. It has no standing either within the US Congress or with the State Department or the US government. It is no more than a group of congressmen coming together on their own and making a statement. But it has therefore no relevance and it has no actual influence on the US government. And despite their calls for sanctions, it is almost never taken up by the US Congress and definitely not by the US government. There is a separate religious freedom report issued by the US State Department every year, which obviously therefore reflects the positions of the US State Department.
The true position.
Yeah, and that report is obviously much milder and often will say that while we have some concerns about what India is doing, we also notice, as Ambassador Srivastava said, that it is a full-fledged democracy, it has a constitution, blah, blah, so we are not overly concerned about, or we expect India to handle this on its own. Often people conflate these two reports, but this report in particular has no standing even within the US system. I should also add that this specific commission, which was created after the US invasion of Iraq under George W. Bush, by a group of congressmen who were horrified at what they felt was a sort of anti-Muslim bias within the US system, was designed to compensate, if you wish, for that sentiment. And so they have specifically targeted anybody who they feel causes unhappiness among the Muslim community, whether overseas and in India. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi, since the 2002 riots in Gujarat, has been a particular target of this commission.
Okay.
And you may have noticed they've recently held a hearing as well on the Kashmir issue. And it was noticeable for the fact that it was so biased, and some of the people that they brought in had really no knowledge of what they were talking about, that even the Western liberal press, which has not been happy with the Modi government, basically ignored what was said.
Okay, so this perhaps explains that, strong counter which has been given by the MEA, where it says that the entire statement of the USCIRF is prejudiced and biased. Let me bring Mr. Srivastava again. And Mr. Srivastava, I was going through the previous statements given by the USCIRF. Looks like they are an habitual offender, if I may say here, in terms of meddling into the internal affairs, which you pointed out earlier. In August this year, in June this year, there are quite a number of instances, one mentioned by Pramit here of June 2008 as well. So why exactly do you think it would not be in the interest? Because both India and United States are now embarking on a new era of bilateral relations. They are working hand in hand on several key issues, not only on bilateral level, but also of global consequences.
Unfortunately, of course, there is something called known as US exceptionalism, which basically means that the United States is an exception to whatever happens anywhere in the world. We can do anything we want. We can make any law we want, and we can violate any law we want. That is their mindset, which has been there for a long time, especially since the Second World War, after the British Empire went down and the US Empire. So they have many such instruments, many such bodies and organs which continue to look at developments all over the world and pronounce their own verdicts, whether something is right or something is wrong.
And not even knowing the context behind what is happening out there.
Yeah, and the other point I'd like to mention is that it is well known the United States has a legal lobbying system. There are paid lobbyists who get things done in the US Congress.
Okay.
And there, this bodies like this and even other organs of the US Congress and the US government, I'm not excluding even the US government from it. Official US government bodies also, they are also open to lobbying by various kinds of interests. And where, countries like Pakistan have long played this game of lobbying. So, if you spend enough money on a lobbyist, you can probably get something into one of such bodies.
Okay.
So we have to keep that in mind also, that it is paid lobbyists are also doing this job.
Perhaps to sensationalize the entire issue and make people talk about it.
So we should not, we in India, we should not be unduly alarmed or concerned at such things. We should look at the bigger picture, and if the US government comes and tells us, we should tell them also to look at the bilateral relationship. There are many wrong things, as I said. I mean, there are many, the Iraq war, the Libya bombing, the Syrian war, where the United States has killed millions of people. Now, if you have yourself done things like this, it's none of your business to go and preach to another government what it should do with its minorities or its own people.
Okay. Pramit, from your point of view, how, although the MEA, the Ministry of External Affairs statement clearly points out that, it's unwarranted and obviously it is not accurate and it's full of prejudice and bias as well. But given the kind of relation both India and the United States share, how much credence should statements like these be given?
Well, this commission, as I mentioned, has no standing whatsoever. It is not a statutory body. It has no congressional, actual official congressional standing. It is literally an informal caucus of several people, and none of its recommendations have ever been adopted by the US Congress. And as soon as they issue a report, I always get a phone call from the US Embassy saying this has got nothing to do with us and the government. It's just a bunch of private individuals. What we should be more worried about, or look more closely at, is the fact that the US House Foreign Relations Committee and some other actual committees within the US Congress have also held hearings, not so much yet on the CAB, but more on the Kashmir issue. And some of those have not gone down well for us. And this reflects the fact that the left wing of the Democratic Party in America right now has started to conflate Modi with Donald Trump. And their broader game obviously is to overthrow Trump, but has started to see these as basically being something that works together. And a smaller Muslim caucus, which has combined Kashmir with Palestine and all sorts of other issues that are of concern to the Muslim community internationally. That is something we need to at least watch. And at least two of the Democratic candidates have come out against India on the Kashmir issue. CAB and the NRC have yet to become something. I think they're two, should we say, niche issues for the rest of the American public to pay any attention to. But this is a trend that we are monitoring. And as Ambassador Srivastava mentioned, there is lobbying going on. I should add the Indian Embassy itself has paid a lobby group as well.
Okay, so there it is. But let me bring in Major General DHRUVCKATOCH here, who's just joined us on the show. General Katoch, your views on the statement which came in from USCIRF and its relevance also, given the context that, as both our panelists have pointed out, it does not have, or rather, it does not actually represent the views of the United States government.
There are three aspects to this. Firstly, whether it represents the views of the United States government or not, I'll get to that in the end. But I think there are two things. Firstly is, what has the statement said? Is it based on facts? And I think that is the very first thing which we should address. It is not based on facts. It is based on conjecture. And I think they have been, either it is deliberate or they have been fed a piece of misinformation. So I think that is the first aspect. The second aspect is, how much credibility do we give statements like this? Now, I agree with the panelists earlier. I do not think we need to give it any credibility. But having said that, even if we don't give it credibility, such statements have got a potential to do a great deal of damage as far as India is concerned. And I'm not so much concerned as to what the Americans will do. I think the larger thing is what the Indians are going to do here. You see, we have people, we have certain groups within India who will pick at a straw to try to stoke violence and communal tension within the country. We have seen what is happening in Kashmir, that despite the fact that since 5th August we've had total peace, there are people who are still baying for blood. So I think that is one concern. The second thing is, you see, when we look at how effective is this particular organization. Now the question was, it was raised in 1998. and it is funded by federal funds. Right, it is supposed to be a non-partisan body, which has been created by both the members will be chosen by both the parties, both the Republicans and the Democrats. And while they do not represent the state, the reports actually go to the state and they're listened to by these people. So I think to that extent, I think. While I am absolutely certain that what my colleague just said, as far as the US ambassadors, and the US embassy are making certain statements, that is true. But on a publicity level, I think it has the potential to create damage within India. And I think we need to be careful about this, especially the opposition. Okay. Because it is the opposition now who will try to raise up this issue. We've already had Dr. Shashi Tharoor, who has made a tweet yesterday. And in that tweet, he said, the Americans are talking about it and our parliament is quiet. Now, I think that is a very dangerous statement which the honorable member of parliament made, and I don't think it is warranted. Okay. So that is, I think, is a very major concern, and we need to be worried about it, and we need to, at least within our own house, set two issues at rest. One, it is the bill does not target minorities. That is one. It has to be made very clear to the United States and the rest of the world. And number two, it is an internal matter of India. Please don't interfere in it.
Okay. You spoke about the effects of these kind of statements on the internal affairs and how people here within India, inside India, are going to talk about it or take it up. But let me bring the other part as well: the relations between both these nations, India and United States. Now, a statement like this. A strong statement like this made based on just conjectures, as you pointed out, and the Ministry of External Affairs has clearly said that there is no truth in it, there is no facts are there. It's an unwarranted statement and inaccurate as well. Statements like these, what kind of effect it might have on the relations between two nations, which are now moving ahead on a different path?
Actually, as far as the Indo-US relationship is concerned, well, I think this is a blip. In a relationship of that nature, when we look at it over a period of time, we are going to get through there will be times when such instances will occur. I do not think it will affect the overall relationship, but I think temporarily it has, it will sour the thing for a little bit of time. But as far as the overall relationship is concerned, I do not think this particular thing will impact.
Okay.
No,
okay.
It won't.
Mr. Srivastava, your views on that?
Yeah, I mean, it is for the US government to decide what importance it gives to its relations with India. If it is serious, if it gives importance, then it will have to ignore things like this and tell us privately that to ignore this. But these matters are very politicized, I mean, the truth, what the truth is, often gets ignored in the politics of these issues. So, since it is a political matter, I think India has reacted to it officially, and I think it's the right reaction. And I hope that if the US government wants to build a strong relationship with India, it will also ignore it and not give it much political weight. That
or the credence, which makes it the situation a bit more difficult. Pramit, your views on that?
Yeah, I mean, as you've mentioned, this commission has been a serial offender. It has issued statements criticizing India for almost over a decade now. It has had zero influence on government policy, whether in the US or India. The US government has never acted on it. Even the US Congress has never acted on it because, as I said, it has no statutory power. And has not even any senior ranking congressman as a member of the commission. It is, as I said, created as a sinecure for essentially the daughter of a senior congressman after he died, and otherwise has had no influence on anything. But as I said, the real issue is not so much this commission as much as the hearings that are going on in the US Congress. Now, because the US Congress, unlike the Indian Parliament, is not linked to the executive, it's a completely separate body in America, it can in many ways go off and do whatever it feels like on its own, irrespective of what the White House or the State Department and Pentagon may think. And somewhat like our own politicians or in any democracy, congressmen tend to make statements to cater to maybe 5 or 6 voters in their home constituencies. But at the actual vote they ignore that and they wait for the State Department to tell them what exactly they should do. In fact, this is now so commonplace in America. For example, when we signed the U.S.-India nuclear deal, the so-called Hyde Act, the U.S. Congress made a whole list of demands on Iran policy and so on and so forth, which were then attached to the bill. When President Bush signed it, they actually cut off everything that the congressman had wanted and said these are just recommendations and irrelevant to the executive. And the actual final bill dropped every single one of the congressional requests. And the President of America said these are just congressional it's not important to the United States government per se.
Okay.
So it's very important to realize that the Congress, U.S. Congress, has the right, if you wish, to vent on issues that it has no real standing on. But it's actually only when legislation is passed that it really matters. Then you get a sense of what actually is happening on the ground.
Or the State Department or the White House makes a statement there. General Katoch, your views on how it needs to be handled on both sides, specifically ensuring that it does not hurt the sentiments as well as it does not hurt that relation which we have built so painstakingly over the years.
I think, firstly, I think the statement which has been given by the MEA, I think it is a very balanced and a very mature statement and a very timely statement too. I think that should set the matter at rest. Very frankly, I think that should be the end of it. The second point is, as far as the relationship is concerned, I absolutely agree. I do not think it is going to impact the relationship. Please remember, I've read this entire report for 2018, which has been issued by this organization. Now, they have placed on the countries for, on a much severe footing, they have placed countries like China and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Now, what has happened? Nothing has happened, right? India comes into tier 2, along with Indonesia and all that. I see no reason why India should be in tier 2 either, but that doesn't really matter. I mean, those people are doing something, let them carry on. It's okay. As it was said, if it's been a sinecure to keep a few people, a few busybodies reasonably occupied, well, so be it. I personally do not see any of this being translated into foreign policy, into the American foreign policy or state policy. I personally feel that the Americans will, well, it has come out and it's there, and I think that is going to be the end of it. I really do not see that it's going to go further. However, having said that, I mean, I'm absolutely flabbergasted as to why they issued the statement in the first place. You see, it is totally unwarranted, as I made my opening remark. It is not based on fact. And if they had even cared to read what the CAB says, what the bill is actually stated, nowhere has it talked about alienating or harming a particular community or any religious group. Now, they haven't even bothered to do their homework. So I think that is something which is very disturbing. The people in positions of power who have been given funds from the government of America, which is really tax funds, they are playing the game in such a way. So have they been motivated by certain other parties? I think that is what I would really like to look into. Are there parties, groups within India? Are there groups within America who are looking into this? Is it being instigated by a third country? We don't know that. But I have got a feeling that if you actually probe that, we are going to move into that direction, that I do not think this would have been an independent action by this particular organization. It would have been motivated.
Okay, so there it is, as has been pointed out by our panelists, and clearly spelled out by the Ministry of External Affairs that this statement coming in from this United States panel is completely inaccurate, unwarranted, prejudiced and biased. And the bill in question, that's the Citizenship Amendment Bill, has a very noble aim out here, quite aptly pointed out by the Ministry of External Affairs as well. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.